Now we are going to be learning the frequency adverbs, and I have made a chart for you guys so you could see it much more clearly. And the percentages show approximately how often something happens. Now, let's look at this chart. Always, meaning it's 100%. Almost always is close to always is 95 to 99%. Usually is 90% to 99%. Frequently is 80 to 90%. Often is 60 to 80%. Sometimes is 50%. Occasionally is 30 to 40%. Seldom is 5 to 10%. Rarely is 1 to 10%. And almost never is 1 to 5%. And never is never, meaning 0%. Now, I'm going to be giving you some examples now using these frequency adverbs. For example, I always, sorry about that, I always drive to work. This is 100%. I always drive to work. I'm going to give you another, I'm going to move on now, give you another example. I almost, oops, sorry about that. Let me use a different color. And before I do that, let me go ahead and put these here. I almost always eat, or instead of say, drink coffee in the morning. So, and that is 99 to 95%. I always drive to work is 100%, meaning I always take my car to work. And my second sentence is I almost always drink coffee in the morning. That is 99 to 95%, which is very likely to happen. Moving on to my next example. I am usually late to class in the morning. And this is 90 to 99%, which is pretty often, which is highly likely to happen. I am usually late to class in the morning. Moving on to my next example. I frequently fly to Istanbul. And that is 80 to 90%. I'm going to go ahead and read these to you one more time. I am usually late to class in the morning, which is 90 to 99%. I frequently fly to Istanbul, which is 80 to 90%. Moving on to my next example. Is often. I often read before I sleep. Before I sleep. And this is 60 to 80%. Meaning that they often read before they go to sleep. Moving on to my next example. And this is very common, so I want you to pay attention closely here. Instead of saying I am going to say she. I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. She is sometimes angry with her sister, and this is 50%. Meaning half and half. She can be angry with her sister, or she cannot be angry with her sister. But if I use sometimes, it's going to be 50%. Let me go ahead and read these out for you. I often read before I sleep, which is 60 to 80%. She is sometimes angry with her sister, which is 50%. Moving on to my next example. We occasionally go out on the weekends. And this is 30 to 40%. Moving on to my next example. Before I do that, let me go ahead and read that to you. We occasionally go out on the weekends, which is between 30 to 40%. Moving on to my next example is rarely. They rarely speak to each other. And if I used rarely, which is the same as seldom, so I didn't use seldom, but instead I used rarely, is between 1 and 10%. So I'm going to go ahead and read these to you one more time. We occasionally go out on the weekends, which is between 30 and 40%. They rarely speak to each other, which is the same as seldom, which is between 1 and 10%, meaning they almost never speak to each other. Now, moving on to my next example. He almost never calls me, which is between 0, sorry about that, which is between 0 and 1%. Now, moving on to my last frequency adverb is sorry about that. He is never on time when it comes to work. And this is also very important, you guys. This is 0%, meaning it is absolutely 0. He is never on time when it comes to work. I'm going to go ahead and read these to you one more time. He almost never calls me, which is 0 and 1%. He is never on time when it comes to work, which is absolutely 0%. Now, today we learned frequency adverbs. Frequency adverbs. And that is it for today, you guys. I had a great time. I hope you did as well. I hope to see you in our in our next lesson. Take care. Bye bye.